Then Shephatiah the son of Matan, and Gedaliah the son of Pashur, and Jugal the son of Shelemiah, and Pashur the son of Malchiah, heard the words that Jeremiah had spoken unto all the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, He that remaineth in this city shall die by the sword, by the famine, and by the pestilence. But he that goeth forth to the Chaldeans shall live, for he shall have his life for a prey, and shall live. Thus saith the Lord, This city shall surely be given into the hand of the king of Babylon's army, which shall take it. Therefore the princes said unto the king, We beseech thee, let this man be put to death, for thus he weakeneth the hands of the men of war that remain in this city, and the hands of all the people, in speaking such words unto them. For this man seeketh not the welfare of this people, but theirs. So here we have a list of some guys, Shephatiah, and Gedaliah, and Shelemiah, and Pashur, and they go before the king. These are powerful princes in Israel. And they heard the message that Jeremiah was preaching. And Jeremiah's message, remember, was this: get out of the city. Don't depend on the king to save you. Don't depend on the army to protect you. You need to get out of the city. The king is not powerful enough to protect you. The soldiers and the military is not strong enough to allow you to preserve your life. If you want to live, if you want your family to live, then you get out and you go to your enemies. And you go and be on their side. Switch teams. You're on the wrong team. So the king hates the words that Jeremiah speaks. And these men and these princes that we read about, they don't like it either. Because they said, this man Jeremiah, he is a traitor. He is on the side of our enemies. He's going to make the hands of our soldiers to be weak. During this time, the Babylonians had besieged Jerusalem. Now, we don't have siege warfare today. But if you know what siege warfare is, it's when an army comes in to invade a city. Now, Jerusalem is on a hill. So it's a very difficult city for an army to conquer. And they have their own fresh water that comes up from under the ground. So to conquer Jerusalem, you cannot cut off their water. And you cannot attack it because it is defended by strong walls. And at the top of the walls are soldiers. So the only way to conquer Jerusalem is by starving the citizens. Because of course the fields where the farmers plant the fields is outside the city walls. So an army will come in and they will besiege the city. That means no one can go and get crops out of the fields. And so the army sits out there outside the walls and waits for the soldiers to starve to death and become so weak that they can break through the wall or break through the door and get into the city and conquer the city. Babylon had tried to conquer Jerusalem once and they had failed because they had to fight an army somewhere else, and so they left. And the Jews said, hey, no one will ever conquer Jerusalem. But then the Babylonians came back, just like Jeremiah had said. And the Jews said, don't worry. The last time they tried to besiege us and they failed, and now this time they will fail again. Put your trust in the king. Put your trust in the military and in these princes, and we will be victorious. And Jeremiah said, no, that's not going to happen. Babylon will conquer these walls. They will enter into the city, and they will destroy you. If you want to live, then you get out, and you get out now. So what does it sound to you? Does it sound like Jeremiah is a traitor? Sure sounds like it, but you know what? He's a traitor against the king and the military, but he's not a traitor against the people. Why? He wants the people to live. And the king and the military, they don't care if the people live or die. All they care about is that they hold on to their power. Isn't that wonderful that politicians are not like that? All they care about is the people. They don't care about their own power. Isn't that wonderful? That's a joke. Politicians are the same today as they were back then. They don't care if you live or die or have food or not, or get a good job or you don't, or have money or not. They don't care about that. They care about their own power and how to hold on to it. So we know what this king and these princes, we know what they were like because we have politicians today that are exactly the same way. So these politicians, these princes, they go before the king and they said the truth. And the truth was that Jeremiah's words is weakening the hands of the military. Think about it. If you're a soldier and you love God, and God's prophet Jeremiah says, hey, if you fight against the Babylonians, you are fighting against God. What are you going to do? Well, if you're smart and you love God, you won't fight against the Babylonians. You will take your family and you will leave the city, you will get out. So Jeremiah basically is saying to those soldiers, if you fight against Babylon, you fight against God. So the politicians don't like that. They said he is weakening, making the hands of the military weak. Then it says, they went before the king, in verse number 4. Therefore the princes said unto the king, we beseech thee, that means we are begging you, we're begging you, let this man be put to death. So these princes went before the king, and they said, King, because of his words, because of the things that he has done, he deserves to die. According to the law, everything they said was correct. We talked about the law this morning. Remember the law? The New Testament says that the law kills. Paul said the law kills. If you live by the law, it will kill you. And we find this an example of what we talked about right here. Here in Jeremiah, he's saying, hey look, according to the law, I need to submit to the king. According to the law, I need to submit to the military, the powers that be. But God has told me that I should tell the people that if they want to live, that they need to run. So Jeremiah said, I need to violate the law of Israel and obey God. And sometimes we might be in that same situation where we need to obey God and break the law. And if we ever come to that point, obey God. And Jeremiah had to make a decision. I can try to be popular and make people love me, or I can obey God. And Jeremiah made the unpopular choice, but he made the right choice. He said, I will obey God. So according to the law, was Jeremiah innocent or guilty? He's guilty. According to the law, remember, the law kills. According to God, he was doing what's right. But according to the law, he's guilty. And what is the punishment for a traitor? It's death. Not a slap on the wrist. The teacher does not get out her ruler and then tell little Johnny to stick his hand out and she smacks his hand. That's not the penalty for being a traitor. It's death. So you could say, according to the law, Jeremiah deserved to die. Now we look in verse number 5. Let's see what the king says. Then Zedekiah the king said, Behold, he is in your hand, for the king is not he that can do anything against you. So the king says, hey look, guys, my hands are tied. I cannot go against what you said. It's true. He is guilty according to the law, and I as the king must also submit to the law. And according to the law, he is guilty. And so according to the law, he must die. So the king Zedekiah said, you do as you would like, because you do according to the law. The king's hands are tied. Guess what you have done before our great king in heaven? You have tied his hands. Why? Because you and I, we all have broken God's law. And for that, God has every right, and God is just, and he is allowed to do so, and he would be fair to say, because of your sin, my hands are tied, and I must condemn you to an eternal lake of fire, an eternity in hell. And God is fair, and he is just, and he is righteous to do that very thing. Why? Because like Jeremiah, we have broken the law. We have broken God's law many, many, many times. And what is the punishment for breaking that law? Sin is the transgression of the law. And because we have transgressed God's law, what are the wages of our sin? It's death. In hell. The second death. The lake of fire. So Jeremiah, like us, has broken the law. And like us, is guilty before the king. And like us, is guilty, and our punishment is eternal death. So we see ourselves in Jeremiah. We see ourselves as one that has broken the law and has been condemned to die. Our condemnation is death from the time that we are born. Because we are born in sin. And our sin condemns us to hell. Aren't you glad that Jeremiah chapter 13 does not stop right there? Aren't you glad that that's not the end? But for most people, that's it. They go and they live their sinful life, living in unrighteousness and iniquity and ungodliness, as we talked about last week in Romans chapter 1. And that's where the story ends. They die and God says, my hands are tied. I gave you the law. You broke the law. And now I must abide by the law. And I must send you to eternity in hell. It says in verse 5, and Zedekiah the king said, behold, he is in your hand, for the king is not he that can do anything against you. Then took they Jeremiah and cast him into the dungeon of Malchiah. And that was one of the fathers of the men mentioned in verse 1, the son of Hamelech, that was in the court of the prison. And they let down Jeremiah with cords, that's ropes. And in the dungeon there was no water, but mire. So Jeremiah sunk in the mire. What was Jeremiah's sentence for his crime? Death. What did Jeremiah do? What did Jeremiah deserve for his crimes? Death. What do we deserve? Eternal death, the second death, eternal lake of fire, because of our crimes, because of our sin, and that we violated the law, and now the king is angry. Our king is angry with our sin, just as the king of Israel was angry with Jeremiah because of his sin. And so the king said, you do with him as according to the law. And so they said, I got an idea. You know that dungeon? You know that place where there's no water? That's under the ground? We're going to lower Jeremiah into that. We're going to kill him. But we're going to torture him before we kill him. I don't want to gross you out. But it says there's no water in that dungeon. It was under the ground. So it was a cistern, or like a cistern where it was a septic tank. Okay? It was a sewage place. It's where they would take the covering off and they would dump their sewage, and their tahi. And then they would cover it back up so it wouldn't smell. And they said, I got an idea. We're going to kill Jeremiah, but we're going to do it in a despicable and terrible way in which we will torture him as he dies. So there's no water down there, but he sank into it. Because the stuff that he sank into is not the stuff that you want anything to do with. So they took Jeremiah and they said they lowered him by cords. As he lowered, they sank him down into the mire. Now here's Jeremiah, he's up to his neck, I don't know, maybe up to his waist, in this sewage. And now think about what got Jeremiah here. Jeremiah here is because he broke the law. You can say, but he was doing it because he loved God. He was doing it to obey God. Yes, that's all true. But he did break the law. But the law was wrong. I know, the law kills. That's what the Bible says. The law kills. Christ makes alive, but the law kills. And so here Jeremiah is. He's stuck in a septic tank, in a place where you dump your sewage, where no human being would ever be put. And these men, they did it for sport, for entertainment. They said, hey, the king says we can do whatever we want. Let's not just kill him, let's torture him. Let's make him die a miserable and disgusting death. Where even his body, no one's going to want to go down there and even get his body. Let's just leave his body down there and let's forget about the man, Jeremiah, and he was ever alive. And so they had him sink down into the mire. Guess what? That's where we were before we got saved. Before we got saved, we were stuck. Was there any way that Jeremiah could get out? No. He can't fly. He can't climb up the walls. He's stuck. It's down. He can't reverse gravity to get up. There is nothing that Jeremiah can do. What about good works? Will that get Jeremiah out? No. And that will not get you out of your situation as a lost person either. A lost person can try to think good thoughts. And they can try to make the best out of a very unpleasant situation. And they can try to do good works. And they can try to say sorry. And they can cry. None of those things was going to get Jeremiah out. Jeremiah could cry out, "Hey! Hey!" Nobody could hear him. Nobody had the power or the authority to get him out. That was something that only the king could do. And if the king was going to do that, he would have to violate his own law. And the king could not do that. He was bound by his law. And that's the way the lost are. They're stuck in their sin. And they're wallowing. That means they're moving around in their own sin. And they don't even know how dark they have it. There's no light down there. There's no pleasantness down there. And there's no light and there's no pleasantness before God in our sin. Before we are saved, we are just like a picture of Jeremiah. We're stuck in our own sewage. Without any light, without any hope, and no amount of good works, no amount of crying, no amount of apologizing is going to get us out of the place where we have put ourselves. It's not that the king is wicked that he did that. Not that those princes, which they were wicked, and that king was wicked. But it was the law. It was the law that was the problem that put Jeremiah in. So what is Jeremiah going to do? If you were Jeremiah, what do you do? What can he do? Nothing. There's nothing Jeremiah can do. He can cry and shout and scream and get mad or get sad or be glad. It doesn't matter. There's nothing that Jeremiah can do. As far as him saving himself, he cannot do it. As far as you saving yourself, you cannot do it. Before you are saved, you must realize there's nothing that you can do to save yourself. I used to ride the bus to work every day, and on the bus I sat next to a man and I was reading my Bible, looked just like this one right here. And I was reading my Bible, and the guy sat next to me. He noticed that I was reading my Bible. And he said something about it, and I said, yes, this is my Bible. It's the Word of God. It's the way that you can be saved. And I began talking to this man, and he was living in just like this guy Jeremiah was living. He was living with his ex-girlfriend and her husband in their house. It was a very despicable situation. And he was living in sin. He was wallowing in sin. And you might say the moral filth of this guy was like the situation where Jeremiah was stuck into a septic tank, sewage tank. And only the gospel was going to get him out. Only that someone would come and pull him out of his sin. You know what? As we drove to work on the bus and back from work, back and forth, every day we became friends, and I gave him the gospel over and over until one day he got off the bus. He walked a few steps to his corner where he got off the bus, and he prayed. He said, God, save me a sinner. God, take me out of the sin and this filth that I'm at. God, I place my dependence on you. Not my works, not my righteousness, not by the works which I have done, but the righteousness and the mercy of God. He put his feet at the grace of Jesus Christ. And you know what? God pulled him out. It wasn't by his own works. It's not by our works. But let's look at what happened in the story. Now when Evangelist the Ethiopian, a foreigner, one of the eunuchs, which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, the king, then sitting in the gate of Benjamin, Evangelist went forth out of the king's house and spake to the king, saying, My lord, the king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the dungeon, and he is like to die for hunger in the place where he is, for there is no bread in the city. So someone came and made intercession That means made a plea on behalf of someone else. Someone came, a foreigner came from a different place, came and made intercession for you. For you. Jesus Christ, a foreigner who came from a different place, far off place in heaven, he came down and he was born of a virgin in Bethlehem. And he went before his father, and he said, Father, punish me for their sin. And the king did. And a foreigner, Evangelist, the Ethiopian, came and he made intercession for Jeremiah, and he went before the king, and he said, King, don't allow this man to die. I want you to go over the law. I want you to conquer the law and do something outside of the law, greater than the law, and spare this man's life and forgive him of his sin against the law. Jesus Christ did the same thing. What did Jesus Christ do when he died on the cross? What did he nail to the cross? What else besides your sins? What did he blot out and nail to the cross? The law. He nailed the law. He said, let's forget about the law. Let's break the law. Let's take the law and let's do away with the law. The law kills. And Jesus Christ came and he died on the cross and he nailed your sins and he nailed the law to the cross, and through his wrists went those nails, and so also did the law, and it died. And that foreigner, Evangelist, like that foreigner, Jesus who came from a far off place came and made intercession before the king. So did this guy to Jeremiah. This is a picture of our salvation. We're like Jeremiah. We're stuck in the cesspool and the sin and the unrighteousness and ungodliness of our own hearts and of our own life. And we're stuck and we cannot find a way out. Though we plead, though we cry, though we beg, nobody can hear us. And then someone came and said, I will go outside the law and go above the law, and I will make a way that you can be saved. That's what Evangelist did for Jeremiah. That's what Jesus Christ has done for us as well. It says in the verse number 10, Then the king commanded Evangelist the Ethiopian, saying, Take from hence 30 men with thee, and take up Jeremiah the prophet out of the dungeon before he died. Why did the king say he needs 30 men? Because Jeremiah's a full-grown man. And you got to stand on top of the ground to reach him under the ground. It's going to take some strong men to be able to lift Jeremiah out of that mire, out of that sewage, strong enough to lift him up out of that pit where he was. Let me ask you this question. If Evangelist could not find someone to help him, could Jeremiah be saved? Could not. He by himself was not strong enough physically to be able to lift Jeremiah. Now let me ask you this question. If there's no one willing to help Jesus Christ to get out the message, that the king has offered a pardon. The king said, Evangelist went before the king and made intercession and said, hey, will you offer a pardon to Jeremiah? And the king said, yes. Here's his pardon. Signed it, sealed it, gave it to Evangelist, and said, now spread the word. Jeremiah has been pardoned. Get 30 men and lift him out of there. What if there was no man to be found that was willing to do it? What good would that pardon do to Jeremiah? It would do nothing. God has offered and granted a pardon to every single sinner born on this earth. But their pardon does them no good unless they receive that pardon, that salvation. If there's no man that's going to go with those 30 men, if there's no one that would say, I will go and I will offer and spread the news of this pardon, and I will help to get those people out of their sin and saved in Jesus Christ. That's the job of every Christian and every believer, not just the evangelist. These 30 men represent me and they represent you. To go out and to help Evangelist, the intercessor, Jesus Christ, to get the pardon from the King, God the Father, that he might declare every sinner righteous who would receive the pardon from the King. So Evangelist is like Christ, and the King is like God the Father. And Jeremiah is like the sinner. And the 30 men is like those that are saved, that would assist the one that would be intercessor from a far off place to go and to deliver the pardon, to rescue them, to pull those sinners out from their sin. It says in verse number 11, so Evangelist took the men with him and went into the house of the king under the treasury and took thence old cast cloths, that's filthy rags, and old rotten rags, and let them down by cords into the dungeon to Jeremiah. So here they did, they took filthy rags and they tied them together and they formed a strong cord. They formed a strong band, strong rope. What can God use? Now, if you're a believer, like these 30 men, what did they do? What did they have to offer? Filthy rags. And God says, I can use it. What is going to get you saved? Is it your works? No, but after you are saved, what is God going to use? Not to save you, you're already saved. What is God going to use? A person that is already saved, what is God going to use? What do you have to offer to God? Your works. That's what you have to offer to God. And what does God say? God says, I can use it. I can use it. I can take your works, filthy rags, though they may be, and I can form them into a strong rope. And I can deliver that rope down into the dungeon of Jeremiah. And so they lowered those two bands, those two cords, those rags tied together to make two ropes. And they said, Jeremiah, we're going to get you out of there. Verse number 12, and Evangelist the Ethiopian said unto Jeremiah, put now these old cast clouds and rotten rags under thine armholes, under the cords. And Jeremiah did so. How smart do you think would it be for Jeremiah to see these ropes coming down, these two dirty rags tied together, and say, okay, Jeremiah, put your arms up, put them under your armpits, your kitty kitty, and you hold on to those ropes, and we're going to pull you out. Would it make sense for Jeremiah to say, ew, these ropes are disgusting and dirty. No, you go back and get some clean ones. I'm not touching those dirty rags. Would that make sense? That makes about as much sense as a lost sinner going to someone that's trying to witness them and saying, hey, look, there's a pardon from the king. You've been declared innocent and righteous. All you need to do is put your dependence on his intercessor who's up there standing on the ground above you. He's calling down. He's giving you a chance. All you got to do is just lift up and take that chance. Take those cords, put it under you, and just hold on. How foolish it would be for a sinner to say, no thank you, I'm fine, thanks. I'll figure out a way myself. That's about as smart as a person saying, I can get to heaven by doing my good works. Good works will do nothing for you. It would do nothing for Jeremiah. The only thing that Jeremiah could do was place his dependence on the intercessor and take those rags and put it under his arm and say, get me out of here. I'm depending upon you and you alone. Not on my works, not on some other person, not on some friend, not on some system. Jeremiah wasn't saying, wait, I got this special prayer. I'm going to pray this special prayer and it's just going to make me levitate out of here. There's only one way out, and that was the intercessor. And I'm telling you, if you're lost today, there's only one way to heaven, and that is through the intercessor, Jesus Christ. There was only one way out for Jeremiah, and that was through Evangelist, the one that was sent by the king. The king has sent someone who has died on the cross and has nailed that old law to the cross and has died. And the law is now dead. And now we have Christ. And if you're going to depend on your works by keeping the law, the works of the law, you will stay in that sewage until you die and go to hell. But you can receive the deliverance, the pardon from the King by putting your dependence not in the law, but in Jesus. Where have you put your dependence? You say, praise God, I'm saved today, and I praise God for your salvation. Then the message for you is this: what about those 30 men? What about those men that had to deliver those cords down to Jeremiah? Are you doing your part to reach those that are in darkness? those that are lost and they're in the septic and the sewage and the rotten stink and smell of their own sin. Are you found actively working with Jesus Christ to save men's souls? Or are you too busy? Are you too tired? Are you too interested in sin your own self to be able to be of any use for the best? Make yourself available. If you're saved, praise God. If you're lost, you need to get saved. Take those cords, hold up, and let Jesus save you. But if you're saved today, you need to be like those 30 men that would say, if the king's given a pardon, what do I need to do to get out that message?